These are essential requirements, prerequisites, becoming free from the bondage of fruitive activities. And a principle of the reading of reading of Ramayana is the reader is inspired to abide by virtue. Anyone who has read Ramayana or portions of Ramayana will know exactly what I'm speaking about. I remember the first time I encountered Ramayana. It was, wow. I'm going to sit straight. This is the standard of virtuous life. Because that was Ram's Leela. He's the ideal king who stood by virtue. Regardless of the consequences, he was ready to accept the consequences, anything that was the outcome of abiding by virtue, abiding by the truth, upholding the word of his father, etc. He would never depart from virtue. Never. And in our lives, there are circumstances that challenge us that may make it a little easy to compromise from virtue because of circumstance. But if one who is dedicated and has taken shelter of Lord Ramachandra will be protected from those tendencies. We find a really nice description about Lord Ramachandra in Laghu Bhagavatamrita. What's Laghu Bhagavatamrita? It's a book that was written by Rupa Goswami. It's now translated and published by the BBT. It's about that thick. And the topic is one thing. It's avatars of Vishnu that come into this world. That's the topic. And the section that describes Lord Ramachandra makes a reference to Padma Purana that says, here's the quote, in Lord Nrsimha, Ramachandra, and Krishna, the 6 transcendental opulences are perfect and complete. They are paravastas, or most important forms of the Lord. From him, Krishna, they are manifested as lamps are lighted from an original lamp. Now what does this mean? What it means is, according to Parashara Muni in Vishnu Purana, Bhagavan means one who has 6 Shad Aishvarya, 6 opulences. What are those 6 opulences? Beauty, knowledge, strength, renunciation, fame. What's the 6th one? Strength. Thank you. In full. Whoever has those in full, because everyone has a little this and a little of that, one who has those 6 in full, that's Bhagavan. Then, having said that, by definition, there are forms of Vishnu or Bhagavan that manifest not the fullness they contain, but they don't manifest the fullness of all 6. And then there's nomenclatures. It goes up and up and up. And the topmost full manifestation of all 6 opulences are found in these 3 very celebrated forms of the Lord. Lord Nrsimha, Lord Ramachandra, and Lord Krishna. Quoted in Laghu Bhagavatamrita from Padma Purana, and that Krishna is the source, the original lamp from which the other lamps have been lit. It's very similar to an understanding that's in Brahma Samhita. Another in the same section of Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Lord Krishna is the best of the 3, or Paravasta. Why? Why should this be surprising? His exalted nature, that of granting liberation to his enemies, cannot be seen in any other form of the Lord. And then there's a detailed explanation of that. For example, the first of the giant Vijay demons that appeared in this world, who were they? Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, right? And Lord Nrsingadev killed Hiranyakashipu. But he didn't go back to Godhead. He came again. Ravana and Kumbhakarna. And when Ravana was killed by Lord Ramachandra, he didn't go back to Godhead. He appeared again as Shishupal and Dantavakra. And then they went back to Godhead. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the second canto, chapter 7, there's a long list of the demons that were killed by Krishna. Each one of the demons killed by Krishna achieved liberation. And it's not the same for the wicked persons and the demons that were killed by the other forms of the Lord. It's a long section in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, but that's one of the super excellences of Krishna. It's a nice one too. Like the discussions you'll be having on the prayers of Lord Brahma, it comes after Krishna killed Aghasura, and Krishna gave him liberation. He came to kill Krishna. Krishna worked it the other way, but he gave him liberation. Whew. And Putana, the first demon that Krishna killed, she not only achieved liberation, but she achieved a position in Krishna Loka as a nurse assisting Mother Jasoda in Krishna Loka. Later this week, I'm going to be conducting a class with the Chinese devotees. Pondraka, he achieved Sarupya Mukti. He wanted to have a four-armed form, he got it. He was inimical to Krishna. He challenged Krishna. He threatened Krishna. He was mad and foolish. Krishna killed him and gave him liberation in Vaikuntha with a four-armed form. Pondraka. He pasted 2 extra arms on, saying, I'm Vishnu. I'm Vasudeva. I've descended into this world to relieve people of their suffering, so you stop pretending to be Vasudeva. That's me. And if you don't accept, then I'll have combat with you and show you. Very foolish. Oh, so some of you are on the temple mailing list. And if you're not on the temple mailing list, please make an arrangement so you can get on the temple mailing list. Because if you're on the temple mailing list, you receive 3 PDF files. And this is one of them. It's Phala Stuti. Phala means fruit, and Stuti, like prayers that describe the Phala, the benefits from reading Ramayana or hearing Ramayana. And they're really nice. I read one already, is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 11. Here's some benefits that are found directly. I'm just going to read a few, but it's several pages. But this is right from Ramayana. Ready? Whoever reads this history of Rama, which is purifying, destructive of sin, holy, and the essence of the Vedas, is freed of all sins. A man who reads this Ramayana story, which leads to long life, will after death, rejoice in heaven, together with his sons, grandsons, and attendants. A Brahmana who reads it becomes eloquent. A Kshatriya becomes a lord of the earth. A Vaishya acquires profit from his goods, and even a lowly Shudra achieves greatness. That's from the Balakanda. Here's from the Yuddhakanda. He who listens every day to this oldest epic, composed by the sage Valmiki, of course he's the compiler, which is calculated to bestow religious merit, renown, and longevity, and which lends support to the Vedas, is completely free of sin. Even as Kaushalya, the mother of Ram, as her living son, or as Sumitra has Lakshman, or Kaikeyi has Bharata, the women likewise can become mothers of living sons, endowed with children, as well as grandchildren, and thus become happy forever. Those listening to this epic will receive from Sri Ram all the boons they desire. Rama gets forever pleased with him who listens to or reads Ramayana daily. He is indeed the eternal Vishnu. Through hearing of this work, all the gods and forefathers are satisfied. One who keeps a copy in his house will find all his obstacles coming to an end. A man offering worship to and reading this historical work is completely rid of all sins and attains a long life. All the gods are thus pleased, and one's ancestors are gratified forever. Those transcribing this work with devotion are guaranteed residence in heaven, while those hearing it will secure the growth of their family and wealth, supreme happiness, and the accomplishment of all their objects on earth, etc. So later, if you are on the mailing list, you can take a look at this Palastuti PDF. And if you're not on the mailing list, find somebody to find out how you can get on the mailing list so you can receive these. Here's one from the final section, the Uttarakhanda section. A person who completely reads this narration of Raghunath attains the abode of Vishnu at the end of life. Of this there is no doubt. Okay, so that's the phala of reading Ramayana. Now, what's Ramayana? What is it? According to scripture, there's the Mullah Ramayana. What's the Mullah Ramayana? It's the original Ramayana that's composed of 100 crores of slokas. That's a big book. 1 billion verses. And that original Mullah Ramayana was given by Lord Hayagriva to Brahma, who in turn passed on 1 billion verses to Narada. Now, Valmiki received Ramayana from Narada Muni. Narada Muni got 1 billion verses. Narada Muni gave a summary of 74 verses to Valmiki, who then composed 24,000 verses compared to 1 billion. But Madhvacharya explains that when Valmiki composed Ramayana, although he heard only 74 verses, he didn't go on a creative writing spree any more than Vyas did, because Mullah Ramayana is eternal. Even before Ram appears, Mullah Ramayana is as old as the Vedas, which is eternal. And Lord Hayagriva passed it on, and Narada passed it on, and Valmiki was empowered by both to write it. But it's just drawing 24,000 verses from 1 billion. Within the Balakanda section of Ramayana, Valmiki indicates that he had an intention to also call Ramayana Sita Charita, the sublime pastimes of Sita, and Paulasya Vadha, because Ravana was the son of Pulasya Muni, the killing of Ravana. In Madhvacharya's commentary to the third verse of Vedanta Sutra, the third verse of Vedanta Sutra is really simple, Shastra Yonitvat. His commentary includes the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, Mahabharata, Pancharatra, and the original Mullah Ramayana are all Vedic literatures. Any literature following the conclusive statements of these Vedic literatures is also considered to be Vedic literature. That literature which does not conform to the Vedic literature is simply misleading. Shastra Mulatvat. So he's honoring, I don't know if anybody's seen a copy of the Mullah Ramayana, but scripturally it's known, 1 billion verses, and that's Vedic literature. In the line of Sri Vaishnavacharyas, many, we're going to touch on them shortly. One of the most outstanding commentators is Govindaraj. Anyone here has heard his name before? Govindaraj? Govindaraj. He was living in Tirupati. He was a great devotee of Balaji and a devotee of Ram. And in a dream, Balaji instructed him to write a compilation of Ramayana. Now, the compilation of Ramayana that he wrote was, in his own words, simply gathering from previous commentators. He didn't create anything original. He just drew from what many commentators wrote and synthesized it in an organized fashion. And therefore, his commentary on Ramayana is considered the most comprehensive and brilliant. So Govindaraj explained that just as we look upon the 12 cantos of Bhagavatam as being non-different than the form of Krishna, correct? From Padma Purana it states like that. The first 2 cantos are his lotus feet. The third and fourth cantos are like his lower legs, and then his thighs, his waist, etc. So similarly, he has names for each of the khandas. Instead of 6, we have 6 on this side and 6 on that side, it comes to 7. And he has names for each one. The Balakanda, his commentary he called Mani, Vanjira, jeweled anklets for the lotus feet of Lord Ram. Ayodhya Kanda he called Pitambara, the yellow cloth covering his legs, etc. For him, it's a meditation on the form of Lord Ram, Kanda by Kanda, until the end. Uttarakhanda is the jeweled top piece, Mani Mukut, the jeweled top piece for the crown on his head. It's a very beautifully written, very poetic description. There's one of the ISKCON devotees, Vidvan Garanga, who's made it his project in life to translate all 7 khandas. And just to give you an idea, Balakanda has 3 volumes, and each of the volumes are like that. And Ayodhya Kanda has 4 volumes, and each volume is like that. And he's now completed the 3rd, Aranya Kanda. and I forget how many volumes. It's just like, it's major, major work, but it's very, very beautifully written. And if you really like Ramayana, I recommend that you check it out. And besides Valmiki Ramayana, which is what Sri Vaishnavas primarily rest their commentaries on, there's many different versions of Ramayana. Now, I remember once upon a time, I didn't know anything about Lord Ramachandra because I only knew Krishna. And then many devotees started asking Ramayana this, Ramayana that. And so we decided to, we, as a group of us, wanted to take a visit to Ayodhya. So we did a pilgrimage to Ayodhya, and I had to learn a lot about Ramayana. And then one of the places they said, let's also go to Chitrakoot. I'd never even heard of Chitrakoot. I mean, it's a really nice place. It's very simple. It's not commercialized. The devotees that live there are very pure devotees. Very simple-hearted, very pure devotees. Nice place. But that's part of Ayodhya Kanda. So in coming to know about the pastimes in Balakanda and Ayodhya Kanda, I came across the fact that there's like, it's a long list. So one of the PDFs that those of you that are in the mailing list received, it's just a one-pager, but there are many. And they're authorized. For example, one of them is referenced in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Bhaktisiddhanta makes reference to it. Prabhupada refers to Bhaktisiddhanta's words, and it's the Adhyatma Ramayana. Adhyatma Ramayana is part of Brahmanda Purana. I don't know if you're all interested in this. I can go through it a little bit, and then you can read it if you are interested, and we can have some discussion, I guess, later. Very popular in North India is Tulsi Ramayana. It's actually Ramcharita Manas. Ramcharita Manas is commonly known as Tulsi Ramayana. But it's a retelling. And in that retelling of Ramayana, there are pastimes in Ramcharita that you don't find in Valmiki Ramayana. Here's an example. Ram Rekha, Lakshman Rekha. It's not in Valmiki Ramayana. You know, when Lakshman went to go find Ram with his bow, he made a circle around the cottage and told her, don't go outside, because if you do, you're at risk. So he made this circle. It's not in Valmiki Ramayana. And there's without going, there's other documents. If you're interested, I can make them available. But where there's differences between Ramcharita or Tulsi Ramayana and Valmiki Ramayana. They're not major, but there's differences. Another is in Bengal. Any Bengalis here? Okay. Kritivasi Ramayana. Familiar with it? You've heard of it? No. Kritivasi Ramayana was named after, very humbly, the author, Kritivasa Oja. Kritivasa Oja. And I'm not Bengali, but I've been told by Bengalis it's really popular. They don't know Valmiki Ramayana or Tulsi Ramayana as much as they know the Kritivasa Ramayana. But there's discrepancies that are found in Kritivasa Ramayana that are not found in Valmiki Ramayana. And for one of them, just to give you a snapshot, Sri Vaishnavas discard that book. And the reason they discard it is, in the book, there is mention of Ram worshipping Durga. Now, it's not in Valmiki Ramayana, and Ram doesn't worship Durga, but it's in his Bengali version. But many of you may know, I'll narrate the pastime. There's a celebrated pastime. Maybe you've seen pictures of it. I have a nice image. It's a picture of when everyone gets back to Ayodhya and Ram's become the king and the ceremony has occurred. Now it's time for giving gifts to the Brahmanas and to everybody. When it's Sita's turn, she has a very, very special necklace. Very opulent, very beautiful, glittering necklace. And she wants to know who to give it to. She looks to Ram. Ram smiles, and she understands that means she's supposed to decide who it goes to. And she looks around, and she's contemplating, this is in this Krittivasa Ramayana, who is the most this and that and the other thing and the other thing, and it's Hanuman. So she smiles at Hanuman and gives Hanuman, she not just gives the necklace to Hanuman, she places around his neck. And Hanuman folds his palms, looks at Sita, almost weeping, looks at the necklace, and starts to gnaw on the necklace. And Lakshman says to Sita, why did you give this necklace to him? He's just a monkey. Look what he's doing. It's such a priceless necklace. Ram responds and says, I think you should ask Hanuman. He asks Hanuman, why are you doing like this? He said, I thought it was going to be something very, very valuable, but I don't see Ram's name anywhere. And so it's worthless. So I'm just chewing it. And then Lakshman says, but your whole body, where's Ram written on your body? And then he opens up his heart and shows, that celebrated painting. Everyone knows that painting. Inside is Ram. Now, Krittivasa Ramayana says, every bone in his body has Ram's name on it. But, the common one is, he shows Ram is in his heart. So his body is worth something because Ram is there in his heart. And then Lakshman says, there is no such devotee as you. Exactly what Sita intended. This necklace is meant for you. You are to be honored as the greatest devotee of Ram. Now that passage is from a Ramayana that Sri Vaishnavas discard for the reason mentioned. Now all of this is in this little PDF that if you put your name on the mailing list, you'll get a copy of. Kamba Ramayana is very popular amongst the Sri Vaishnavas. Those in South India will know what Kamba Ramayana is. Very popular. Now he's retelling in simple form. It's not as elaborate. It's a shorter version than Valmiki Ramayana. But he covers all the khandas. Ananda Ramayana. It's anyway. I won't go through all the. There's versions of Ramayana. That's what's on your screen over here, and it's not only in ancient India. From the Puranas, Skanda Purana, Kurma Purana. There's whole sections in those Puranas that are just on Lord Ram's pastimes, and it's called Ramayana. In the world, not only in India, outside of India, there's Ramayanas. Ramayanas in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Japan. It's popular. And then you'll find, I found, it's a little confusing. Because it's not like the Bhagavatam, there's just one Bhagavatam. But there's many Ramayanas. So like which Ramayana? So commonly, amongst those who are lovers of Lord Ram's pastimes, Valmiki Ramayana, please. That's the gold standard for many, or most. According to Padma Purana, it states there are 100 versions of Ramayana. And the differences or variations are due to different days of Brahma. Different days of Brahma means Lord Ramachandra doesn't appear every Treta Yuga. He appears once in the day of Brahma. Should I say it again? I'll say it again. We're presently in Kali Yuga, and Krishna appeared in the Yuga before this one, Dwapara Yuga, and the Yuga before that one is Treta Yuga. So I used to think that Ramchandra appeared in Treta Yuga, Krishna appeared in Dwapara Yuga, Lord Chaitanya appeared in Kali Yuga. But that's not what the scriptures say. Here's what the scriptures say. Once in a day of Brahma, listen carefully, the 24th Yuga cycle of our present Manu, Vaivasvata Manu, who's Manu number 7 out of 14, on the 24th Yuga cycle is when Ramchandra descends. And a Yuga cycle is a long time. 4,320,000 years is one Yuga cycle. And that's how long ago, 24th Yuga cycle, this is the 28th Yuga cycle, when Krishna appeared. Yet he's celebrated like it was not so long ago. In fact, the Ramayana, with the benediction given when Valmiki began composing it, this Ramayana will be known as long as the hills and rivers and the seas exist. As long as there's the cosmic manifestation, Ramayana will be known. Okay, moving right along. There's a link that's described in both Padyavali and Gopal Tapani Upanishad, the link between Rama and Krishna. What's Padyavali? Padyavali is a compilation of verses by Rupa Goswami, some of his favorite verses. Padyavali. Series of verses, several hundred verses. So here's one, the author unknown. Yashoda was describing to Krishna. There once was a king named Ram. Yes. His wife was Sita. Yes. On the order of his father, Ram lived in Panchavati forest. Then Ravana kidnapped Sita. As Lord Krishna heard his mother narrate his own activities performed in ancient times, he suddenly called out, "Lakshmana, where's my bow? Where's my bow? Where's my bow?" I pray that these alarmed words of Lord Krishna may protect you all. And one of the Upanishads, Gopal Tapani Upanishad, gives a meaning, one of the meanings of the Gopal Tapani Upanishad sloka, which reads, Yo Sau Saurye Tishtati. Sanatana Goswami gives the following commentary. Lord Krishna is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead who formerly appeared in the Surya, Vangsa Saurye as Lord Rama. So that the same person, same supreme person, appearing differently in different ages. Now, I'm going to try to wind this up. The history portion of the Vedas are the Puranas and the Itihasas. And there's two main distinctions between a Purana and an Itihasa. They're both histories. But a Itihasa covers things chronologically. The Puranas do not. They're not bound by chronology. And commonly, Itihasas are describing a certain lineage, like the Surya dynasty or Mahabharata, the Pandavas and their ancestors and their descendants. And the Puranas don't do that. And commonly the Itihasas are very long, and they were put to memory by singing. So they're meant to be sung. And they're very, very, very beautiful when they're sung nicely. Just like Love and Kush. They sang. And everyone was charmed. And even Lord Ramachandra sat and listened to the charming singing of Love and Kush, hearing Ramachandra's pastimes. There are many poetic images. It's replete with poetry. And here's a topic that was mentioned already. Hearing Ramayana inspires the reader to abide by virtue. I mean, that's an intention, and that's an effect. And it's a fact. It inspires living one's life by virtue. Now, because of time, I'm not going to go through all of this, but according to Govindaraj writes in his commentary somewhere in the Ayodhya Kanda, the commentary, the understanding of Ramayana was given to by Yamunacharya. Who is Yamunacharya? Yamunacharya is the spiritual master of Ramanujacharya. Yamunacharya is the spiritual master of Ramanujacharya. And Yamunacharya studied Ramayana in depth. And from his deep study of Ramayana, he concluded that there are 18 principal lessons, 18 cardinal lessons. And to teach those, Yamunacharya taught to Sri Shailapurna. Sri Shailapurna was one of his disciples who was alive during Yamunacharya's life. Yamunacharya left the world before Ramanujacharya became his disciple. So Ramanujacharya learned these 8 cardinal teachings from Sri Shailapurna, who was his uncle. And then Ramanujacharya taught his followers, who then taught everybody. So it's a core part of the understanding in Sri Vaishnavism that there's 18 cardinal lessons. And when you get a chance, you can go to your mailing list, and you'll get these 18 cardinal teachings, which I'm not going to do right now because of time. But it's there for you to look at if you want to learn them. Again, we're almost done. There's 6 shelter-giving qualities in Ram, because Ramayana is a treatise on surrender, and for surrender there's shelter-giving. So the sages in the Dandak forest, they sought shelter of Ram because he fulfills all the criterion of one who gives shelter. Here's what the Sri Vaishnava commentators say. Swami, Tvam is having the quality of Swami, Tvam. There, he has the character of being a master or a lord. He's very affectionate. He has good character, so Shailyam, good character. And with that good character, he was very compassionate and liberally gave him his association to anybody, everybody. Monkeys, bears, squirrels, anybody, everybody. Demons. He was very approachable, and he had full knowledge, and he had the ability to accomplish anything. These are characteristics found within Ram. When Vibhishan came to take shelter of Ram, this is the last little section, when he came, he left Lanka with 4 ministers. And the Sri Vaishnavacharyas say these 4 ministers, shown in this image here behind him, they represent 2 characteristics of one who's taking shelter and 2 characteristics of one who's giving shelter. Now, if this is maybe not so good for a Sunday feast lecture to cover. These are subtle points, and they're very relishable, and it takes some time to go through them nicely. But here we go. A Sharanagata, that's one who's wishing to take shelter. I possess nothing, akinchanatvam. Some of you like Srimad Bhagavatam, and Queen Kunti uses this word akinchana twice in her prayers. Akinchana gotra, etc. Possessing nothing which I view as my shelter, akinchanatvam, having that characteristic. And ananyagativam, I fully repose, I have no other shelter, I take full shelter in you. That's Vibhishan, or that's one who's a quality necessary to take full shelter. And then the one who's giving shelter, he gives shelter to anyone, saralata, means simplicity. The child is too distracting. Can you do something? I mean, I'm a sannyasi. And most family people are used to that. But as a sannyasi, I'm not. It's like this so my apology for the parents, but it's distracting. I'll try again. Saralata, he gives shelter to anyone without any consideration of who they are or simplicity. And Shakti, he has power to relieve anyone of any shortcoming or any difficulty and pick them up. That's one who is worthy of taking shelter. No consideration of who's he's giving shelter to, and he has the power to deliver them. He's just looking for someone that wants to surrender. He doesn't force it, but someone who wants to surrender, he's ready. And the one that wants to surrender, they look to him without having some other shelter, and he's it. So those are lessons from Ramayana, which is this treatise of surrender. And maybe you'll have some time between now and next weekend when the appearance day of Ramchandra comes. It's nice. I know what I'm going to be doing. When I leave here, I'm going to Houston. And we're just going to be reading from Ramayana. Sections and sections and sections to prepare ourselves for Lord Ramachandra's appearance. So you can do the same. There's nice translations, English translations. You may already have your own language translation of Ramayana, but I encourage you, pick it up. And your heart will become benefited and ready to receive Lord Ramachandra's appearance. So let's see if there's some discussion. I've gone a little bit over time, but that's me. 6:30. Any comments or questions? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for the wonderful class. One question, Maharaj, pertaining to Lord Narasimha or Lord Ram doesn't give liberation to the demon that they kill. But in the narration of Prahlad Maharaj, he is asking Narasimhadev that his father be forgiven. So Narasimhadev tells him that not only you, but your 21 generations are liberated. So how do we...
What does that mean? To answer your question, it requires a definition. Because as to Shipu didn't go back to Godhead, because he came back again and he came back again. And once you go back to Godhead, you don't come back again. So he didn't go back to Godhead. So what kind of liberation does that mean? Because there are different kinds of liberation, right? So the kind of liberation means his sinful reactions were cleared. Clean slate. His prarabdha karma was gone. That kind.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yes? So people remote can hear you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Take the mask down so I can hear you better. It's muffled.
No, I have two masks, so I'll try to speak louder.
There we go. Very good. He's turning the volume up too.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
In surrender, the definition, does it include material and spiritual both, or what kind of surrender is the actual definition of surrender? When you surrender to Lord Ram or Lord Krishna, does that mean that you are surrendering materially or spiritually? What's the difference?
What's the difference between material surrender and spiritual surrender is your question.
Yes.
Well, one is negation and the other is positive. One may reject things of this world. That's material. But that person who rejects things of this world may not have taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So it's incomplete. And complete is taking full surrender, full shelter in service to the Supreme Lord. And then its subset of that is material, but it's then complete because there's surrender to the spiritual. Does that answer your question?
So surrender would mean service. It would be active service.
For yes.
Okay.
For yes. Because surrender unto what? There's something on the other end. That's a person. And when you surrender to a person, it's service. Yes.
Okay. I get it. Thank you.
Okay. Is that it? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Prabhupada Swami Maharaj ki.